I spent years staying silent to avoid rejection, conflict, and awkward moments. I didn't realize each quiet choice was slowly deciding a life I never meant to live. I remember the first time I decided not to say what I really felt. I was 15, standing just outside the gym after school, watching Claire Thomas laugh with her friends near the lockers. She was wearing that red hoodie she always wore after volleyball practice, her hair tied back in that loose kind of way that made her look even more like herself. I had written this note, just a stupid folded scrap of notebook paper, telling her I liked her. Not in some over-the-top, dramatic way, just honest. I was planning to hand it to her, or maybe just leave it in her locker. Something simple. I had carried that thing around in my back pocket for 3 days, waiting for the right moment. And now here it was. But instead of walking up to her, I just stood there, frozen. I started thinking, what if she laughs? What if her friends laugh? What if I make a fool of myself? Then came the usual excuse. Now isn't the time. Not with everyone around. So I turned around and walked home. Never gave her the note. Never told her anything. And that day passed into the next, and then into years. She started dating some guy named Scott the following semester. They got serious, and that was that. I told myself it did not matter, that it would not have changed anything anyway. But that was a lie I would repeat more times than I could count over the years. See, I used to think silence was strength, that not saying anything made me safe. Like if I kept things in, I could avoid all the messiness, rejection, embarrassment, conflict. I figured if I stayed quiet, I could stay in control. What I did not realize back then was that choosing silence did not just keep me from pain. It also kept me from possibility. It sounds like a small thing, just a note I never gave a girl. But looking back, it was the first of 1,000 moments where I stepped aside from my own life, where I let the moment pass instead of risking anything real. And the truth is, silence always feels easier in the moment. It wraps around you like a blanket, but it is a thin one. And eventually, you start to feel the cold coming through. That was the beginning. Of what exactly? I did not understand then, but I would learn. Slowly, quietly, in ways that crept in around the edges of everything I thought I was building. Because life does not blow up when you stay quiet. It just slowly drifts in the wrong direction. And one day, you wake up and realize you are nowhere near where you meant to be. It was my first real job interview after college. Not some internship or part-time gig. This one had a salary, benefits, the whole deal. It was at a marketing firm downtown, the kind of place with modern furniture, glass walls, and coffee that did not taste like gasoline. I had made it to the final round. Just me and one other candidate. I remember walking into that office with my resume printed on that slightly thicker paper, wearing the best suit I could afford. Still had the tags from the clearance rack at Kohl's tucked inside the sleeve. I had practiced answers in the mirror for hours the night before. Even ran through scenarios where I would politely brag about my strengths without sounding like a tool. The interview went fine. Better than fine, actually. The manager smiled. She nodded along like she was genuinely impressed. I left feeling like I had a real shot. 2 days later, I got a call. They liked me. Said I was smart, capable, personable. But there was one concern. They thought I might be a little too quiet. Not assertive enough for a client-facing role. The words hit me like a slow burn. I was about to explain. To tell them that I could speak up when it mattered. That I just needed time to grow into the role. I even opened my mouth. But then I paused. That voice in my head, the one that always shows up right when I need courage, started whispering again. Do not beg. Do not make it awkward. Just thank them and move on. So I did. I said thank you for the opportunity. I said I understood. I told them I appreciated the feedback. I hung up the phone, stood in the middle of my tiny apartment, and just stared at the wall. Not angry. Not even disappointed. Just hollow. I kept thinking about how I could have pushed back. Asked for a trial period. Offered to prove myself in a smaller role first. Something. Anything. But instead, I stayed silent. Again. And life, like always, moved forward without me. I ended up taking a job at a different company. It paid less, was farther away, and I sat in a corner cubicle where I mostly kept my head down and did what I was told. From the outside, it looked fine. Steady job. Decent paycheck. Safe. But I knew that I had let something slip away. Not because I was not good enough, but because I did not speak up when it mattered. And the worst part? No one ever knew. Not my friends, not my family. Because I smiled and told them I was lucky to have found work at all. That lie. It is fine, became my go-to, even when it wasn't. And slowly, that silence started shaping more than just my career. It started shaping me. I was 26 when I moved in with my girlfriend, Lauren. We had been dating for about a year, long enough to believe we knew each other, but not long enough to understand what cohabiting would really reveal. She was bold, decisive. She had this way of filling up a room, like her presence rewrote the script of whatever was happening. I admired that about her. At first, it felt like a new chapter, building a life together, sharing late-night groceries and inside jokes. But not long after she unpacked her last box, the shift began. It was little things at first. She hated when I left the bathroom fan running. She said it gave her headaches. So I stopped. She did not like the old couch I brought from my apartment. It made the place look student cheap, she said. So we tossed it. Then it was the music I played while cooking. My worn-out sneakers by the door. The way I folded towels wrong. Harmless preferences, right? But they piled up. Quietly. And every time I gave in, I told myself it was not worth making a big deal. It is not a hill to die on. Pick your battles. Let it go. That was my mantra. Until one day, I realized I had no say in the place I lived. No corner of the apartment looked like mine. No music I liked played from the speakers. No routine I followed was mine alone. She started speaking for both of us at dinners with friends, telling stories I barely recognized. She had opinions about my job, my clothes, even my relationships with people I had known for years. And I just nodded along, because speaking up felt like conflict. And conflict felt dangerous. I would look at her across the table, telling someone I was not the ambitious type. And instead of correcting her, I would smile. I would feel this heat in my chest, this instinct to push back. But then that same thought would whisper, do not ruin the mood. It is not worth it. Until one night, it all cracked. We were at her friend's house for a birthday dinner. Everyone was talking about future plans, travel, careers, big goals. When it was my turn, I barely started saying I had been thinking about applying for a promotion at work when she cut in with a laugh and said, oh, please, he would never. He likes playing it safe too much. Everyone laughed. And I did too. But I felt something tear inside me. I wanted to say she was wrong. That I had dreams. That there was more to me than this easygoing placeholder of a man she had made me out to be. But I said nothing. I smiled. I sipped my drink. And I died a little more inside. That was the night I knew something was deeply off. Not with her, but with me. With how I let things slide. With how I avoided truth in the name of keeping peace. I had let someone else write my role in my own relationship. And I had never once stopped them. His name was Mason. We met our first year of college, bonded over black coffee and shared sarcasm. He was the kind of guy who made everyone feel like they mattered. Never loud, never fake, just present. Over the years, we drifted into that rare kind of friendship where words became optional. You could sit in silence and still feel understood. He called me Quiet Thunder. Said I was the type who held a storm but never let it out. I used to laugh when he said that. By the time we were 30, life had started carving different paths. Mason moved to Denver, got serious with someone, started working for a nonprofit. I stayed in the city, behind a desk, behind my silence. But he still checked in. Every few weeks, calls, texts, funny videos. He always reached out first. I always replied late, if at all. Not because I didn't care, but because I do not even know. I just always told myself, I will respond when I have more energy, when things settle down, when I am feeling more like myself. Then one night, out of nowhere, he called. It was late. I had just gotten back from a draining work dinner, kicked my shoes off, phone buzzing in my pocket. I looked at the screen, saw his name, and let it ring. The voicemail came a few minutes later. His voice sounded off. Not sad, just tired. He said he was feeling out of it. Said he missed how things used to be. Said he was trying to hold on to people who mattered before everything changed. And still, I said nothing. I saved the voicemail. Listened to it a couple more times. I even opened a text, started typing. Hey, sorry I missed the call. What's going on? But I erased it. My brain fed me the usual line. He will be fine. You do not need to make it a whole thing. He is probably just going through something. I told myself I would reach out in the morning. I never got the chance. 3 days later, I got a message from a mutual friend. Mason had passed away. No warning. No explanation. No second chances. They called it sudden. Said there were signs he had been struggling privately. Said nobody really knew what was going on in his head. I did. Or at least I should have. I had the signs. I had the message. I had the moment. And I let it go quiet. I cannot tell you how many times I have replayed that voicemail. His voice, soft, searching, waiting, and my silence so loud. I did not say goodbye. I did not even say I hear you. Just like that note in high school. Just like the job. Just like Lauren. Only this time, there was no later. And that was the first time I really understood something. Not speaking your truth does not just shape your life. Sometimes it shadows someone else's. After Mason died, something shifted. I kept telling people I was doing okay, but I was not. Not really. I was showing up to work, hitting deadlines, nodding through conversations like a man trapped behind glass. Everyone assumed I was just quiet by nature, easygoing, unbothered. And I let them think that. But inside, I felt like I was screaming, just without a sound. I started noticing how much of my life had been shaped by what I did not say. It was like standing in a house you had lived in for years, only to realize you never picked out a single piece of furniture. Everything around me was a result of silence, of choosing peace over presence, comfort over clarity. At work, I was still in the same role I had been in for 4 years. I had watched 3 coworkers get promoted to positions I once considered applying for. Each time, I told myself the timing was not right. I told myself I would wait until I felt more confident, more prepared, more something. But really, I was just scared of putting myself out there, of hearing no, of being told that my quiet wasn't enough. And the same pattern showed up in every part of my life. A cousin's wedding came and went. I skipped it because I did not want to explain to everyone why I was still single. A former mentor reached out about grabbing coffee. I made up a scheduling conflict. Even my own mother started asking if I was okay more often than usual. I told her I was just tired. I was always just tired. But what really hit me happened one random Sunday afternoon. I was cleaning out my closet, something I had been putting off for months. I found this old shoebox wedged behind a pile of winter coats I never wore. Inside were scraps of old life, college notes, photos, birthday cards, a mixed CD from Mason with my name scribbled on it in Sharpie. At the bottom was a letter, addressed to me, from Lauren. I must have missed it when we split. I guess she left it in the box during the move. I sat down on the floor and opened it. Her handwriting was rushed, emotional. She wrote that she knew I had been holding back, that she could feel how much I cared, but also how much I refused to say. She said it felt like loving someone through a wall. She said she waited for me to fight for her. And I never did. I never told her she mattered. Not in the way she needed to hear it. I just assumed she knew. And that assumption cost me everything. By the time I finished reading, I realized the truth I had been avoiding for years. My life did not fall apart because of some grand disaster. It slipped away in small, quiet choices. Moments where I could have spoken and chose not to. Doors that were never locked, but I never turned the handle. I looked around that apartment, at the silence I had built for myself, and I felt it in my chest. This deep, aching awareness that I was living a life shaped more by avoidance than intention. But just when I thought I was ready to change, something else happened. Something I never saw coming. It came on a Tuesday, middle of the afternoon. One of those work days where nothing feels urgent, but everything feels heavy. I almost ignored the call. Unknown number. I stared at the phone while it buzzed on my desk, already forming the excuse in my head. Probably spam. I will deal with it later. That sentence again. Later. But something made me pick up. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. A woman asking if I was related to a man named Richard Hale. My father. I had not spoken to my dad in over a year. We were not estranged exactly. Just distant in that polite, quiet way that let everyone pretend things were fine. Holiday texts. Short calls. No real conversations. She explained that he had been taken to the hospital earlier that morning. Heart issue. They were monitoring him. Nothing catastrophic yet, she said, but they were contacting family. I thanked her. Hung up. Sat there staring at my computer screen while emails kept coming in like nothing had happened. I told myself I would visit after work, that I would go once I wrapped up a few things. Once I was in the right headspace. Once I felt ready. The old pattern. But the thing is, I had things I had wanted to say to my father for years. Things about how distant he had always been. How he taught me silence by example. How praise was rare and emotions were treated like inconveniences. I always thought there would be time. That night, I did not go. I told myself he was stable. That visiting tomorrow would be better. Less rushed. Less awkward. I even pictured it. rehearsed the conversation in my head like I always did. Calm, controlled, honest. The next morning, my phone rang again. Same woman, same tone, different words. He had passed in his sleep. No dramatic goodbye. No final conversation. Just gone. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, holding the phone, feeling that familiar hollowness spread through my chest. Not shock, not even grief at first. Regret. Because buried under everything I never said was the truth that scared me most. I wanted him to know me. Really know me. And I never gave him the chance. At the funeral, people stood up and spoke about him. Talked about his work ethic. His reliability. His quiet strength. Quiet. Always quiet. I stood there listening, realizing something that hit harder than I expected. I had inherited his silence like a family heirloom. And just like him, I had mistaken restraint for wisdom, distance for safety, silence for control. Standing there by his grave, I felt this sharp clarity cut through the fog. This was where my life was heading if I did not change. A series of unopened conversations. A legacy of things left unsaid. I wanted to tell him I understood now. That I forgave him. That I loved him. But I was too late. And that truth followed me home, sat with me in the quiet of my apartment, and whispered something I could not ignore anymore. If I kept living this way, my story would end the same. And I would only have myself to blame. A few weeks after my dad's funeral, I started noticing something unsettling. People were making decisions around me. Big ones. And no one was asking my opinion. At work, my team got restructured. New manager. New direction. I found out about it in a meeting where everyone else seemed prepared. When the manager asked if anyone had concerns, the room went quiet. I felt that familiar pressure rise in my chest. I had concerns. Real ones. About workload. About priorities. About whether my role even made sense anymore. I told myself it was not the right time. I told myself I would follow up later. Later never came. The changes rolled forward without me. Responsibilities shifted. Credit moved elsewhere. I became background noise in my own career. Then it happened again, closer to home. My sister invited me to dinner. Halfway through the meal, she casually mentioned she was thinking of moving our mom into assisted living. She said it like the decision was basically made. She asked what I thought, but her tone told me she was really just informing me. I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. I had thoughts. About mom's independence. About timing. About how fast everything felt. But instead of saying any of it, I said something safe. Something useless. I said I trusted her judgment. The words tasted wrong the moment they left my mouth. That night, driving home, it hit me. This was not bad luck. This was not coincidence. This was a pattern so consistent, it was almost mechanical. Every time I stayed quiet, the world filled in the silence for me. People did not ignore me out of cruelty. They adjusted to the version of me I kept presenting. The agreeable one. The low-friction one. The man who never pushed back. I had trained them to. And the most uncomfortable truth of all was this. No one was stealing my voice. I was giving it away. That realization followed me everywhere. In grocery store aisles. In the shower. In bed at night, when my mind refused to shut off. I started replaying moments from my life. Not the dramatic ones, but the small ones. The pauses. The swallowed words. The times I told myself silence was smarter. Each memory lined up like evidence. Love I never confessed. Boundaries I never set. Grief I never shared. Ambition I never claimed. My life was not just shaped by what I did. It was shaped just as much by what I refused to say. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. I started wondering what my life would have looked like if I had spoken up even half the time. Who I might have been. Where I might have ended up. That question scared me more than rejection ever did. Because it meant the misalignment I felt was not random. It was authored. By me. And then, right when I thought this awareness might finally push me to change, I was given a moment so clear, so unavoidable, that staying silent would cost me something I could not replace. The kind of moment that does not come twice. Her name was Riley. We met at a friend's birthday dinner. Both of us stuck at the end of the table where the conversation died and the cake crumbs lived. She had this dry sense of humor, the kind that made you lean in just to catch it. By the time dessert was over, I already knew I would think about her longer than I should. We started seeing each other, slowly at first, then more often. Weekend hikes, movie nights, grocery runs that turned into inside jokes. She asked real questions. She noticed things. She pulled thoughts out of me I forgot I had. And I felt something different. Not just comfort. Permission. Permission to be known. But I still kept a part of me guarded. Like I was testing the floor with every step, making sure it would not crack. Every time I wanted to say something real, how much she meant to me, how scared I was of messing it up, I stalled. Now is not the time. Do not make it too heavy. Just enjoy this. I told myself that over and over, until one night, she looked at me across my living room and said something I did not see coming. I do not know how long I can keep guessing how you feel. She did not say it with anger, just this quiet honesty that made it hurt more. She said she liked me, loved me, maybe, but she was not sure if I was ever really in it with her. Not fully. That being with me felt like standing in a warm room with the windows closed. Safe, but airless. And that was the moment. The moment to speak. To say everything I had swallowed. That I thought about her when I heard her favorite song on the radio. That I memorized how she tied her hair on Sundays. That I was terrified of losing her, because for once, I had something worth risking myself for. I felt the words rise in my throat. And I froze. Not because I did not feel them, but because I did. So deeply it scared the hell out of me. So I said something else. Something forgettable. I told her I understood. That I needed time. That I would try to be more open. She nodded, but her eyes dimmed. Just a little. And right then I saw it. The exact moment when someone starts stepping back, before they even move. She stayed for another half hour. We talked about her week. She kissed my cheek at the door. But it felt different. Lighter. Like she was already loosening her grip. I stood at the window and watched her car pull away, knowing I had done it again. Another moment. Another silence. Another fork in the road where I just stood still. And this time, I was not sure I would get a second chance. Because sometimes, people do not wait forever. Sometimes, they stop knocking if you never open the door. It happened on a Thursday. No warning, no big event. Just me alone in my apartment, eating leftover pasta and half watching some old movie I had seen a dozen times. The kind of night that should have been unremarkable. But something was different. My phone lit up. A message from Riley. Hey, I've been thinking. Maybe we should take a break. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just quiet. Clean. Like a thread being pulled loose from a sweater you loved too long. I read it 3 times. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I thought about saying, I get it. About giving her space. About going quiet like I always did, because that was easier than saying what I really felt. But something in me cracked open. Maybe it was all the weight of what I had held in. Mason, my dad, Lauren, every version of myself I had stepped around for years. Maybe it was the fact that this time, I actually saw it happening in real time. I could feel the door closing. And for once, I did not want to be on the other side of it. So I called her. She picked up after the 3rd ring, and I just talked. No plan. No script. Just every truth I had been choking on for years. I told her I was scared. That opening up always felt like peeling skin off. That I had spent my whole life believing silence would protect me, only to find out it just made everything lonelier. That I had wanted to tell her 100 times how deeply I cared. But I had convinced myself it would come out wrong, or too much, or too late. She did not interrupt. I told her about Mason. About my dad. About the job, the girl in high school, the way my own life had started to feel like a story written in someone else's handwriting. I told her I was tired of living behind glass. And then I said it. I love you. I do. And I am sorry it took this long to say it out loud. The words felt like fire and oxygen at the same time. I had imagined saying them before, but always in perfect moments. This was not perfect. My voice shook. My hands were cold. But it was real. There was silence on the line. For a second, I thought I had messed it all up again. Then she spoke. Very quietly, she said, thank you. No promises. No fairy tale ending. Just that. And honestly, that was enough. Because for once, I had shown up. Not just in body, but in voice. In truth. After we hung up, I sat on the couch in the dark. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but it was not fear this time. It was presence. The world did not fall apart. I did not die of embarrassment. I did not get laughed at or pushed away. I had told the truth. And maybe that would not fix everything. But it was the first real step toward living a life I was actually part of. Not just watching pass by. I woke up the next morning different. Not lighter. Not fixed. But more here than I had felt in years. The city sounded louder than usual outside my window. Horns, wind, distant sirens. Same sounds as always, but something in me had shifted. They were not background noise anymore. I was noticing them. I was noticing me. I got up, made coffee, and sat at the table without my phone, without a distraction. Just sat there. It was quiet, but not the kind that swallowed me. It was the kind that held space. I kept thinking about all the times I had stood in rooms and swallowed what I should have said. How many moments I let slide by while pretending it was not the right time, or that it did not matter, or that I would get another chance. But the truth is, life does not always give you clean second drafts. Most of the things I left unsaid, those doors are closed now. Claire, the job, Mason, my dad, Lauren. I will never know what could have been, and I have to live with that. But that is not where the story ends. Because silence might shape your past, but it does not have to own your future. I started small. That afternoon, I walked into my manager's office and asked to talk. I told her how I had been feeling, overlooked, stuck, ready for more. She blinked like she had never heard my voice at that volume before. She listened, took notes, said she appreciated my honesty. I texted my sister and asked to revisit the conversation about Mom. Not with judgment, just with presence. Told her I wanted to be part of the decision, not a passenger in it. I even sat down that night and wrote a letter to Mason. I know he will never read it, but I needed to say the words anyway. For me. And Riley? We kept talking. Slowly. Gently. Not every moment is perfect, but it is real. And that is more than I have had in a long time. Now, when I feel that instinct to shut down, to take the quiet route, I ask myself one question. What if the words matter more than the comfort of avoiding them? Because they do. Every time. The truth is, I spent a long time building a life around silence, thinking it would protect me, thinking it would make things easier. But all it really did was make me disappear. And I do not want to disappear anymore. I will probably never be the loudest person in the room. That is okay. My voice does not have to echo. It just has to be mine. And now I use it. Even when it shakes. Even when it is late. Because it still matters. Especially now.